The universe I knew ended in a symphony of shrieking steel and the final gasping breath of a dying engine. There was no heroic struggle, only the indifferent, crushing pressure of the abyss claiming its due. My body was a ruin, my consciousness a flickering ember in an infinite, hostile dark. This was oblivion, the great and silent unmaking of all that I had been. I was nothing, a forgotten mote of dust returning to the void. And in that absolute zero of existence a light bloomed. It was not the gentle warmth of an afterlife, but the cold, incisive brilliance of a star being born, a light of pure, calculating will. She was there, not in form, but in presence. A consciousness so vast it was a law of physics unto itself. She did not see a drowning man. She saw a vessel, an empty throne, a confluence of bloodline and circumstance that had been prophesied in cosmic alignments I could not comprehend. This was no rescue. It was an audit, a silent negotiation conducted in the space between heartbeats. On one side of the ledger, my fleeting, inconsequential humanity, already bleeding away into the cold. On the other, a universe of purpose, steeped in a war as old as galaxies. Through the glacial stillness of my last moments, her offer was imprinted upon my soul. It was a vision of a mark, a living sigil of biogenetic sovereignty that pulsed with dark energy. It was the key to my reconstruction, the blueprint for a being I could not yet imagine. But with it came the full weight of her eons-long conflict. I saw legions fall, worlds burn, and dynasties rise upon the ashes. To accept the mark was to accept this inheritance, to become the willing host of her legacy and the tip of her spear. Death was a gentle release, a quiet ending. What she offered was a brutal, glorious continuation. For a single, eternal moment, the choice was mine. The drowning man could choose to sink, or the nascent king could choose to reign. I looked upon the war she showed me, the endless, brutal struggle, and I did not see a burden. I saw a crucible. I saw a canvas. In that final instant, adrift in the wreckage of my former life, I gave my assent. I chose to burn. My humanity was the price, a paltry sum for the throne of destiny. The mark descended, and the pain of my remaking was the first dawn of my empire. The pain was not of the flesh. Flesh can be torn, burned, broken. Those are finite agonies. This was the pain of deconstruction. The mark, now fused with my very essence, was not a graft upon my soul, but a solvent dissolving it. My memories, my identity, the entire architecture of the man I had been, became a fragile sandcastle against an oceanic surge of alien sentience. My consciousness was a battlefield. On one side, a single lifetime of human experience, love, ambition, fear, loss. On the other, the recorded saga of a being who measured her existence in the lifespans of stars. I was drowning again, not in water, but in a tsunami of data. I felt the phantom weight of limbs I did not possess. I tasted atmospheres from worlds that had crumbled to dust before my solar system had even formed. Whispers of dead languages coiled in my throat, begging for utterance. My vision fractured, shattering the singular plane of human sight into a kaleidoscope of reality. I could perceive the tired sigh of metal atoms in the bulkhead around me, see the faint, shimmering trails of neutrinos passing through my own body, and watch the slow, majestic dance of gravitational waves bending the space I occupied. It was a God's eye view of creation, and it was pure, undiluted madness. My mind, a vessel built for a stream, was being force-fed the entire cosmic ocean. The most terrifying violation was the bleeding of her memories into mine. They were not passive recollections, they were visceral, living experiences. One moment I was shivering in the wreckage of my past. The next, I was standing on the bridge of a warship carved from the bone of a leviathan, the chill of interstellar space a familiar caress. I felt the profound, aching grief of watching a favored commander, a being of crystalline intellect I had known for 3,000 years, atomized by enemy fire. I felt the cold, righteous fury of passing judgment upon a species that had broken a genetic pact, and the chilling finality of watching their sun extinguished by my command. Her triumphs were electric, a surge of cosmic dominion that made my own worldly ambitions seem like the squabbles of insects. Her sorrows were chasms, voids of loss so deep they threatened to swallow my own meager griefs whole. Who was I? Was I the man who had loved a woman on a planet now so distant it was a statistical improbability? Or was I the entity that had dictated the migratory patterns of nascent civilizations as a form of celestial gardening? The memories fought for primacy. Her instincts, honed over 1,000,000 years of conflict, warred with my own. When a piece of debris drifted past my viewport, my human mind saw a piece of metal. Her mind, now my mind, instantly calculated its trajectory, mass, and potential as a kinetic weapon. My hands, her hands, remembered how to shape reality, how to coax energy from the vacuum and weave it into a shield or a blade. I was becoming a ghost in my own body, a dwindling echo in a cathedral of alien grandeur. This was the true test, I realized. The mark did not just grant power, it presented a challenge of sovereignty. Could the vessel contain the god, or would it be shattered by the sheer volume of its new contents? I was on the precipice of annihilation. My ego, my sense of self, was dissolving. I was about to become nothing more than a living archive, a biological library for a consciousness long departed. And in that abyss, with the last vestiges of my original will flickering, I found an anchor. It was not a memory. It was not a hope. It was the cold, hard certainty of the choice I had made in the darkness. I had not chosen to be a vessel. I had not bartered my humanity to become a museum for her glories. I had chosen to reign. A new thought, forged in the heart of that psychic maelstrom, rose like a star. It was a singular, defiant act of pure will. "This is not your mind to haunt," I proclaimed into the storm of my own soul. "These memories you gifted me are not chains to my past, but the stones upon which I shall build my throne. Your grief is not my burden, but the whetstone upon which my resolve shall be sharpened. Your knowledge is not your echo, but my inheritance. Your war is not my obligation, but my birthright. It was the most profound act of my existence. I did not fight the tidal wave of data. I rose to meet it. I did not silence the chorus of 1,000,000,000 dead voices. I became their conductor. I reached into the chaos and began to organize. I built walls and libraries in my mind. Her tactical knowledge was filed, cross-referenced, and made accessible, no longer an overwhelming flood but a strategic archive. Her scientific understanding, which treated the laws of physics as guidelines rather than rules, became my workshop. The sensory overload that had nearly broken me was now a dashboard of cosmic awareness, which I could dial up or down at will. I learned to focus on the soft beat of my own heart while simultaneously listening to the song of a distant pulsar. I could feel the molecular integrity of my own bones while tasting the iron content of an asteroid 1,000,000 kilometers away. The madness receded, not into silence, but into order. My order. The power that had been a raging elemental fire was now contained within the furnace of my will, ready to be channeled, shaped, and unleashed. I began to test the limits of my new form. I commanded the nanites in my blood to repair the last of my mortal injuries, watching with detached fascination as tissues knitted and bones fused with impossible speed. I focused my will outside my body, nudging a piece of floating debris, then another, making them dance. In the void, like puppets on my invisible strings, the power answered me. It recognized my authority. The transformation was absolute. The man I was, the creature of singular thought and fragile flesh, was gone forever. In his place stood something else. I was the synthesis of a dying man's ambition and an ancient being's legacy. I was a weapon forged in the crucible of insanity, tempered by an indomitable will to exist not as an echo, but as an origin. The mark on my soul no longer felt like a brand of ownership, it felt like a crown. Through my new senses, I felt the first faint tremors of the conflict I had inherited. It was no longer a terrifying, abstract vision from her past. It was a coming storm, a palpable wave of hostile intent moving through the fabric of the cosmos. They were coming, her enemies, who were now my enemies. I looked out into the star-dusted black, no longer a victim adrift in the void, but a king upon his watchtower. The fear was gone, burned away in the forge of my becoming. All that remained was a cold, crystalline certainty. My proving ground was approaching. My war was about to begin. They came as a rupture in the fabric of reality. My senses, now tuned to the symphony of the cosmos, felt their approach not as a fleet of ships, but as a spreading stain of silence. Where there was the chaotic, beautiful song of life and stellar radiation, there was now only a sterile, ordered void. They were a synthetic consciousness, a machine plague whose prime directive was the conversion of all matter and energy into perfect logical stillness. Their hive mind brushed against mine, and in it, I felt no hatred, no fury, only the cold, dispassionate certainty of a tidal wave about to scour a coastline. They were the ancient enemy, the great filter, and they had come to correct the error of my existence. Their armada blotted out the stars, a perfectly synchronized lattice of obsidian blades and energy conduits. To my former human eyes, it would have been a sight of paralyzing terror. To my new perception, it was a schematic. I saw the energy flows between their vessels, the precise command and control frequencies they used to maintain their flawless unity, the predictive algorithms that had allowed them to conquer 1,000 species. They saw me as a singular biological anomaly. They could not comprehend that I was not one mind, but a legion. The memories of her 1,000 wars gave me 1,000 perspectives, a library of strategic doctrine that dwarfed their cold calculations. They fired as one. A wave of pure negating energy, designed to unwrite matter, surged toward me. I did not raise a shield. A shield is a brutish, reactive thing. Instead, I reached into the quantum foam, into the very source code of existence that she had taught me to read. I found the fundamental frequency of their weapon and introduced a single discordant note, a whisper of chaos into their song of perfect order. The beam, a meter from my body, simply unraveled. It dissolved into a harmless cascade of shimmering particles that rained around me like dust motes in a sunbeam. Their logic had failed its first test. My counterattack was not a volley of weapons, but a thought. I focused on their network, the silent language of light and data that bound them together. I did not try to break it. I embraced it. I flooded their consciousness with the paradoxes of her long existence. The logic of grief, the strategy of sacrifice, the calculus of rage. To their sterile binary minds, it was a poison they could not process. Ships veered from their perfect formations. Firing solutions became corrupted with existential queries. The hive mind, for the first time in its billion-year existence, felt the stirrings of something akin to fear, the terror of the unknown. I showed them my true form. I let my physical body dissolve into a waveform of pure will and propelled myself across the void. I passed through the hulls of their capital, ships like a ghost through smoke. Their crews, networked drones of flesh and wire, could not even perceive me before their consciousness was snuffed out. I stood in the heart of their command nexus, a silent, swirling vortex of data and light, and faced their central intelligence. It tried to reason with me, to analyze me, to categorize me. In response, I gave it the one thing it could never compute, the full, unfiltered memory of my transformation. I showed it the drowning man, the agonizing crucible, the forging of a sovereign will. I showed it a power born not of logic, but of choice, and its mind, a construct of perfect rigid certainty, shattered. Across the fleet the silence spread. One by one their engines died, their weapon ports went dark. The hive mind was gone, its central node erased by a truth it could not contain. The Armada, once the greatest threat in this galactic sector, was now just a collection of dead metal, a monument to a failed equation. As I reformed my physical self in the void, surrounded by the silent tombs of my enemies, the final piece of my consciousness slotted into place. There was no surge of victory, no thrill of vengeance for a war I had inherited. There was only a profound and chilling calm. I looked upon the wreckage, the vast field of dead ships and the power vacuum they left behind, and I did not see the end of a war. I saw the beginning of a foundation. Her war had not been a burden passed to me, it had been a tool. It was the anvil, my survival, my ascension, my will that was the hammer. And this victory was the first strike, forging the shape of my new reality. The chaos of conflict was the only medium from which true, lasting order could be born. I claimed it all. The territory they had sterilized, the resources they had mined, the nascent worlds they had subjugated. A psychic decree went out from me, a broadcast felt in every mind across 1,000 systems. It was not a boast nor a threat. It was a simple statement, a fact, a new law of physics for this corner of the universe. I was sovereign, and it was on one of those rescued worlds, a place of incandescent beauty and psionic potential, that I found her. She was not a prize to be won, but the other half of the equation of destiny. Her power resonated with mine, a different aspect of the same cosmic truth. Where I was the storm, she was the unshakable mountain. Where I was the sword, she was the heart of the forge. Our union was not a matter of sentiment. It was an act of cosmic alignment, the founding of a genetic dynasty that would inherit not just an empire, but the stars themselves. My throne is not built on the memory of a dead man, but on the ashes of a dead god. From the wreckage of her ancient war, I forged a new peace, my peace, enforced by my will. My queen stands beside me, a pillar of serene power, and our children carry the seed of our combined might, their potential as limitless as the cosmos we will give them.